We're writing Santa to let him know his contestants are Monster and Moana's going into Conclave. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. So we've got loads of movies to talk about this week. As always, we're going to look at Moana 2, Conclave. We're going to look at Yule Monster. The Contestant is the one I'm really excited about this week, if I'm honest.
Yeah, you're a Squid Games fan. You're thinking Squid Games for that, aren't you? Is that what it is? It's triggering your Squid Games fan.
It is. I just started watching Squid Games Series 1 again, ready for Series 2, which is coming out pretty soon.
I sent you the poster this morning, didn't I, for Squid Games
you did.
2, which is Boxing Day on Netflix, I think.
And I'll probably be watching it. So
you're going to get drunk off your ass and watch Squid Games on Boxing Day, aren't you? Yeah,
that's the plan. That's the plan. Probably the whole series in one go if it's out all in one go. But let's first of all dive into something festive. Of course, it's a Christmas movie called Dear Santa. It's got one of my favourite actors in, Jack Black.
Really? Jack Black?
I love Jack Black. I love him.
Okay, all right. Do you know what? I have a lot of time for Jack Black in a supporting capacity, not a leading capacity, which is kind of what he's doing. Actually, that's a bit disingenuous. He's kind of the villain here. So, right, this is a new comedy that's directed by Bobby Farrelly and co-written by Peter Farrelly. So there's a lineage here that goes all the way back to Dumb and Dumber, Something About Mary, Kingpin, Heartbreak Kid, things like that, right? Only this is a movie that, despite being... Is it R-rated? I think it's R-rated. Oh, it's a 12. Okay. It is aimed sort of at the age of... I think it must be aimed at the age of the kids who are in this, which is about 11 years old. So, in what might be the single greatest concept I have ever heard for a Christmas comedy, and I texted you and told you this one in advance, so I know you were a fan. This is about the little 11-year-old boy who's having trouble at home. His parents are bickering. He thinks they're going to divorce. His life kind of sucks. He's overweight. He thinks he's a bit of a dweeby nerd. He's got his big glasses and his naff hair. And one Christmas, he writes a letter to Santa, basically asking him to fix all of this. However, our 11-year-old lead, as it happens, is dyslexic. And, well, they don't specifically say that. They just say he's bad at spelling. But in actuality, it's played as he's just dyslexic. And so he sends a letter to Satan, who's Jack Black. Right. You can see how they got there, right? Yeah, it's a great idea, right? It's a fantastic idea for a comedy. So, little dyslexic boy writes a letter to Santa. It goes to Satan instead. And since it's literally addressed to Satan at the North Pole, I think it's called, Jack Black's Satan shows up in the kid's bedroom, just magics himself there, and says, I'm going to grant you 3 wishes, because that's what I really do. The kid still thinks he's Santa at this stage. And in return, I'm going to take your soul. So it's basically the plot of a Tenacious D song, funnily enough, but done in a movie that's for children and put onto Paramount Plus. This has been on Paramount Plus since Monday, so they very quietly dropped this. I've got a clip for you. This is Jack Black and the Farrelly Brothers' new comedy, Dear Santa.
Oh, that's putrid.
Thank you.
What do you want?
You summoned me.
Not what I expected.
What'd you expect?
In the movies, the reindeer usually have the antlers, not you.
Kid, are you high?
I'm ready for this.
You lucked out big time, so I'm way better than Santa. Ho, ho, frickin' ho. You, my friend, are getting 3 wishes.
You mean like a genie?
They stole that from me. By the way, after you make your wishes, I'm taking your soul.
What?
You ain't never had a friend like me. Okay, that I may have stolen from Aladdin. Now we're even.
Oh, I do love the sound of this. And let's be honest, with spelling like that, it's a good job he didn't try and arrange a trip to a warehouse.
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah. Or ask for a Bucks Fizz on Christmas Day. that is an old Only Fools and Horses joke, that one. Right. So, like I say, brilliant concept. And actually the casting, kind of like Jack Black, brilliant casting for that concept as well. You're like, okay, that's kind of genius. I like that idea. The problem is, despite having that genius concept, it's almost like they forgot to add jokes to this. And it's not a short one. It's about 100 odd minutes long, and the film seems to stop twice. Like, there are 2 points in the final half hour where the film seems to be over, and then it just starts up again. The jokes kind of fall flat. And the ones that they have remembered to crowbar in feel like they wouldn't actually work for a real 11-year-old, which is odd, given that, the kid's in at 11. You kind of feel like you should have just gone all out and actually done the R-rated version of this concept. Do the R-rated or 15-rated version of this concept and just give the people what they want, because I actually don't think that live-action Jack Black really has that much appeal to children. Like, I don't at all. Whereas our age, the idea of Jack Black in this concept has a lot more potential. And if you allow Jack Black to go blue, so to speak, I think there's a lot more success there. We could wind up with something closer to something like his performance in Tropic Thunder, for instance, or again, Tenacious D. Like, the idea of this as a Tenacious D movie, and it's worth noting that Kyle Gass does appear in this, which sort of tells you roughly when this was made, doesn't it? When you look at the events of Jack Black's life over the past year, specifically relating to Kyle Gass. And it just doesn't come together. It's also got, and right, despite the fact that this, like I say, skews quite young, this might have one of the single most depraved, out of left field, WTF end sort of twists, end pivots, or final movements of any film I've seen this year. And I've seen Strange Darling and Love Lies Bleeding. I cannot, for the life of me, imagine just what everybody in the writer's room was on when they came up with the conclusion to this film, which is very much a wow. I mean, it doesn't fit the rest of the movie it's so dark. It is so twisty. It's like, wow. Okay. Fine. I mean, it's Bobby Farrelly directing, who, like I say, looking back at the films that have been made there, Shallow Hal, which was with Jack Black, which, funnily enough, would have totally made for something more fitting to this. That tone would have fitted this better, the Shallow Hal tone, which, again, very dark, very twisted. If this had been dark and twisted all the way through, and still had the directorial pedigree that Bobby Farrelly is bringing to this, you would have wound up with a better movie. Had they just aimed it older, you would have wound up with a better movie. Had they remembered to put some jokes in it, you would have wound up with a better movie. But it just isn't funny, it just isn't smart, it just isn't anywhere near the potential, making good on the potential that this concept had. And it's very by the numbers and perfunctory at times as well. Like, the exact Christmas songs that are going to appear in this. That it's going to begin with "It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas," and at some point they're going to drop Run DMC's "Christmas in Hollis," and at some point, and it's very much a checklist type film. So on the one hand, you have a checklist film. On the other hand, you have a comedy without jokes. And then on a third imaginary hand, which presumably is the kind of thing Jack Black Satan can simply spawn from between his buttocks, which is literally the kind of thing he does here. You've then got this very weird kind of kids movie from the Farrelly brothers. So you've just got a film that doesn't work and makes a lot of sense as being a dumped to streaming release. So, great idea, poor execution.
Yeah, from what you've said, it does sound like they've tried to stop it from going over the line and not then aimed at kids. And it's in like a weird limbo state, actually, where it doesn't really know what it is.
Yeah, because you couldn't put this on and watch it with Albert, for instance, because it wouldn't interest him. He's too young for this. It's not interesting. But at the same time, if he were 11 years old and the exact age of the kids that are being depicted in this, it would probably be too dull and silly for him at the same time. So there's really no sweet spot with this one.
Okay, well, if you want to check it out, you can, because Dear Santa is out on streaming, you said, didn't you, Van?
Well, it's on Paramount Plus, but you can also buy it on digital at the same time. So you can watch it, stream it freely on Paramount Plus if you're a subscriber, or you can pay for it and buy it on Amazon Prime and the Apple Store.
Wow, really has been sort of released under the radar, hasn't it?
On a Monday, no less.
I know, it makes you wonder if they haven't got any faith in it, doesn't it? A little bit.
Well, Monday is when they release DVDs and Blu-rays. So it's Friday for cinema, it's Monday for home end. So this is being considered a home end release.
Well, there you go. You can go watch it yourself if you would like to. We're going to move on to The Contestant in a moment, which I'm really looking forward to finding out more about, and Your Monster in just a sec. We'll see what Van thought. Stay where you are. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. 2 more movies to look at right now. We're going to look at The Contestant in a moment, which is a bit of a weird movie, to be quite honest. You were chatting to me earlier about it, and you sent me a little sort of thing about it. I was like, "What? This looks crazy!" So we'll talk about that. Stay there for that. But right now, Your Monster. So this, I understand, is a bit of a romantic comedy.
Sort of. I think romantic dramedy would be the genre description, but also one with kind of sort of hybrid indie mainstream sort of a tone. So it stars Melissa Barrera from the most recent Scream. She's basically the lead in the last 2 Scream movies. She played the wonderfully named Sam Carpenter, because, you know, John Carpenter, get it? Scream movies. I love that. She famously has now left the Scream franchise because how dare she decry that there is genocide going on in Gaza. Paramount literally sacked her. That is a true story. Go and look that up. Thank you very much, Paramount. So that is actually a thing that happened. It was Skydance. I think it was the company was Skydance. I think they are the new owners of Paramount. They sacked her because she condemned Israel for committing genocide in Gaza. So that's a real fact for you today. Anyway, never one to sit around and do nothing. She has moved on to something else. It's called Your Monster. It stars her alongside Tommy Dewey, in which she is a young actress, like a stage actress, who is battling cancer. She's undergoing treatment for near-fatal cancer. She is starring in a stage play that is being directed by and has been written by her boyfriend, who, at the beginning of the movie, we are told, is actually such a colossal douchebag that he can really only put up with a girlfriend for so much time who has to go in for all these pesky hospital treatments. And so he dumps her ass. Literally while she's on chemo. Yeah, he's that kind of a heartless scumbag that he literally dumps a woman with cancer. Which, yeah. But then again, he is a theatre director, so you can sort of, kind of believe it. Now, as she's starring in his play still, she one night discovers that there is a literal monster living in her closet. Like an actual Wolfman-style monster living in her closet while she's going through all of this emotional turmoil, whilst her friends have seemingly abandoned her boyfriend has left her, and the two start to bond. And this connection that forms between them starts to burgeon into something of a sort of would-be romance, a sort of, a sparky potential love connection that also emboldens her to address all of the crappy people in her life, all the crappy friends, the crappy ex-boyfriend / director, all of that, and see her basically stand up for herself, but with a bit of a horror twist. So I've got a clip for you. Have a listen. This is the pair watching, Ye Olde musical on the telly one night and starting to bond.
They really don't make movies like this anymore. Every time it makes me cry.
I liked it.
Are you crying?
No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
I know I'm crying.
I mean, I'm obviously not crying. Are you blind? My eyes are dry, and you're crying. And the movie was just fine, okay?
You love musicals.
No, I don't. But
yes,
stop.
You do.
This is I don't want to feel this way.
2 things. First of all, is it not just Beauty and the Beast?
Well, there is a very obvious comparison to be made there, and yes, it is. It is effectively a sort of a contemporary spin. What if Belle was just a working actress, in the modern day? And yes, it is. In that sense, it is. However, because it would like to avoid that comparison, it kind of feels a bit messy and a bit choppy, and it doesn't quite come together. You feel like if they'd lent into it a bit more, then the film would feel a bit more coherent and it would flow a lot better. But it feels kind of rocky, and it's at its best in the scenes that really feature either Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey doing the bonding, when the connections forming between them, or the scenes in which, and these tend to form more towards the end, she is telling off the boyfriend / director. It does build to a really good ending. I will say that it does build to a really solid, really fun ending. But getting there for a film that kind of is this short, because it's really only a 90 minutes. Is it 90 minutes on the nose? Oh, it's not like it's 103. Once you sort of take off the credits, it feels closer to 90 minutes. It feels like a bit of a slog, getting a bit of a mess. And that's a real waste of potential. However, the performances from Tommy Dewey and Melissa Barrera are rock solid. They are great. I mean, Tommy Dewey's obviously having a blast. He's having fun being, as you can hear in the clip, sort of a charming everyman version of the Beast, because he's doing all that whilst dressed as Michael J. Fox in Teen Wolf, effectively. And then that's the closest thing for the look of the character, by the way, would be Teen Wolf.
Yeah,
and Melissa
I agree.
Barrera is doing a bit more of a sort of a contemporary empowerment take on Belle. The problem is it's just not particularly engaging or memorable outside of the two of them and that ending. But anyway, we've got a more thrilling one to get on to next, so I will end that one there.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I've got to say is I was watching the trailer just a minute ago and it said based on a true story. What?
May well be. Every woman has that ex. But,
Well, if you want to check out Your Monster, you can. It's in cinemas from today. So is The Contestant. So shall I read the synopsis to The Contestant? And it'll explain why I straight away was like, Van, I can't wait to see this. So it says, a Japanese reality TV star left naked in a room for more than a year, tasked with filling out magazine sweepstakes to earn his food and clothing. Wow.
That's it. That really is the concept. So this was a real game show. This happened was it in the 2000s. This was kind of this. Oh no, it wasn't 2000. It was 1998, because they specifically mentioned that this happened a few months. This started a few months before the movie The Truman Show opened. And as we are told by a BBC journalist who is interviewed, there was a BBC journalist who was working in Tokyo at the time, and we are specifically told, like, the world did not know about reality TV in the same way at that time. The Truman Show hadn't come out, so people en masse were not too familiar with the concept. Big Brother was still kind of a far-off dream at that stage. Like, we weren't as accustomed to reality television show in 1998 as we are now. So this is Nasabi, his name is. He was a comedian who, becomes this contestant for, what I'm not sure what he thinks it is, actually, because he's told it's not going to be televised. He gets locked in a room with a magazine rack and nothing else, not even his clothes. And
We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know the magazines as well, Adam, don't we? And there's two cameras pointing at him. There's another little bit of trivia that you're going to gain out of this that you're never going to guess in a million years. And he has a stack of blank postcards, and all he has to do is just fill in these postcards and enter competitions, and he wins prizes, and all he has to do is rack up a certain amount of value of the prizes before he can be released. However, Tsuchiya, the producer of this, who Nasubi initially thinks of as a god, he soon comes to think of as the devil, because he absolutely tortures this poor man. Not only once, but twice, because this is an hour-and-a-half long documentary, and believe me, his time in that room, or should I say, the first room, takes up only the first half hour of this, because after 11 months, Nasubi was let out of this room. He was rewarded, taken to Korea, treated to a bit of Korean barbecue and a day in an amusement park for his victory, and then locked in another room.
Oh, no.
And forced to repeat the process all over again. It's absolutely nuts.
Wow.
And the story doesn't even end there. Right? Believe me, I could tell you all of the stuff about him being in the room, and we're still only 2/3 of the way through this 90-minute film. It is an absolutely deranged story, and you start to see, when you get through this, exactly where a lot of our fundamentals for reality television originate. Like where a lot of things like Fear Factor and Big Brother and things like that spawned. you start to learn firsthand. And believe me, we had nothing on the Japanese in the late 90s, really. Also, sidebar, and here's a pub trivia thing for you. This has got to come up in a pub quiz at some point. These guys invented the, let's just say, secondary meaning of the eggplant emoji. Because remember, he was naked, wasn't he? And he has a cushion. He literally puts a cushion in front of his junk. And at first, they used a black circle over his privates. And then after a short time, they moved to using the eggplant emoji. And they were the first people to do it. Because it provided them an outstandingly difficult technical challenge to try and map this eggplant emoji over him. And that's where it comes from.
As he moves, right, of course.
Yeah, and it comes from the show Denpa Shonen. I will tell you, it's a documentary. It's a fascinating documentary. I couldn't look away from this. I was, at the same time, quite emotionally invested, but also I found it quite vomit-inducing at times as well. The things that this poor guy goes through. And believe me, he was exploited quite heavily. And we get to see, he does look back on this in contemporary times. And we get to see him like now looking back on this, what happened 20 years
Good, he's still alive then.
He's still alive. Nobody asked him at any point what he thought of Squid Games, incidentally, which is a question I really would have asked him. I would have been the first thing I would have thought. So out of interest, have you seen Squid Games? Yeah. I would have loved to have known what. I bet you he can't bring himself to watch something like that. Because having gone through, But really fascinating stuff. Like I say, I've got the screen link for you. I'll send you this through. It is absolutely deranged, and being the big Squid Games guy that you are, you're gonna be really fascinated by this, honestly. And I would say, if you want the origin story of so much of our contemporary reality TV culture, this is it. You couldn't fictionalize this. You really couldn't. It is perfect. Actually, tell a lie, you could. It would be the Truman Show. But yeah, honestly, this is so unique, so weird, so twisted, at the same time kind of moving and really harrowing, and particularly as regards certain cultural things, how his family responded to it, things like that, and the trade-off between their need to culturally ostracize him based on, him allowing himself to go on television and be naked and exploited. You can imagine in a Japanese household that wouldn't go down very well. However, let's just say they have to forgive him for reasons. And it's not a conversation they ever had. It's really something. So definitely check out The Contestant.
I would have to go on YouTube to see if there was any of the real footage still available from when he was in there.
You'll see enough of it. You will see enough of it in the film.
Oh, great. Oh, it's actually, of course. It's loads on there as well, I suppose, isn't there? Which is part of it. The Contestant, look out for it. It's in cinemas from today. We've got 2 movies left to go. We're going to look at Conclave in a moment. And next, Moana 2. Stay where you are. Hello and welcome back to Offscreen. Right, we've got 2 more movies left to go on this show. We're going to look at Conclave soon, but right now, the one that a lot of people have been waiting for, it is, of course, back to Dwayne Johnson with Moana 2.
Yeah, do you know the story behind Moana 2? Funnily enough.
I don't know anything about Moana 2, if I'm honest, no.
So there was no theatrically released Moana 2 on the books until November last year. And the reason there is now a theatrically released Moana 2 in existence is because Disney's stock price was in the toilet in Q3 last year. And during the Q3 earnings call last year, then returning Disney CEO Bob Iger announced that enough with all of these Disney Plus TV spin-offs. We are diluting our brands, we are killing the theatrical business, and we are basically killing the legacy of Disney. So we're going to do away with all these TV projects we have. We're going back to films. Starting with, we've got a Moana 2. It's going to be out in a year's time. And Dwayne Johnson's going to return. There's only a slight problem with that, which is it would be physically impossible to produce end-to-end a computer-animated feature film in a year. Well, of a decent caliber. Now, I sat in a screening the other night and listened to the producers and the director turn up on stage to intro the film and say the words, "We were working on this for 4 years." So, read into that for a second. This began life as a Disney Plus spin-off TV series / movie. I think it was a feature-length pilot that was then going to go into a series. In other words, it was not intended to have Dwayne Johnson returning. It was intended to be basically an ongoing series. As such, you start to notice in the film that there are certain things that don't really add up. Like, clearly there's some expansion that needs to come. A lot of this, that's why. I'm just telling you in advance. So, let's look at the film on its own, however. Set a year or so after the events of the first Moana. Moana is now the wayfarer, the wave rider, something like that. The great sailor of her island. She is exploring the local, all the nearest islands in range of hers, looking for signs of other cultures and civilizations. Because remember, her people think they are alone in the world. However, they do know that once upon a time, other people exist, and she is going off in search of any physical evidence she can find whatsoever that these people are still out there. And she stumbles across a broken bowl, I think you'd say, that seems to have a map on the side of it that points to a long-lost, rumoured island off in the middle of nowhere, which would have been the central anchor point of a bunch of other different civilizations, including her own. And if she can find this island, she will be at the center of the universe, effectively, and all of the people can find her then. And assembling, getting on a new boat, setting off on the most dangerous journey she's had yet, she needs a bigger boat, she needs a crew this time, which of course means you've got to bring other new ancillary characters into it. And it would really help if along the way she could perhaps find the lost demigod Maui, who no one has seen since the events of the first movie, in order to help her. That's your plot. I've got a clip for you. This is what happens when Maui turns up again.
Okay, rule number 1. You never saw me like this, even though I still look very cool.
You look like a kidney stone.
And you look like someone who would know what that is. Now... Well, hello, Bacon. Okay, I feel like there's some backstory that I need to get caught up on. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. I don't want to get attached if y'all... You know what I mean? Which you guys won't. You're not going to do that. I don't even know why I said that. The point is, there's some serious God stuff going down. So I'm going to go handle my business.
So does it still have the sort of, I don't know, those little comedy moments throughout, like the first one, or has it lost a bit of that because it was meant to be a series?
Well, I mean, it still has the an attempt at the comedy. The problem is none of it's funny. I mean, there's one gag in it. Like, literally, Faith and Zara and myself sat there in the screen. We're talking about the big high-end screening in Odeon Leicester Square and everything, with the Moana popcorn buckets and little bags of pineapple nibbles and things like that. Watching this, Tuesday night this week? And, we laughed once. It's worth noting, and that is a gag that Dwayne Johnson comes out with about the pig and the chicken, which, to be fair, is kind of a lazy gag, but it works. It's not very funny. The songs in this one are not memorable. I feel like, what actually happened here is they had a TV pilot, and when it came time to repurpose it for a film, they thought, okay, well, let's just add some songs, and that'll pad it out for us. And you look at the runtime of this, it's 100 minutes. You're going to get about 15 minutes of credits because it's an animated Disney film. So, 85 minutes. So I genuinely think pilot movie. If I was going to take a guess, I would say 3-part pilot for a Disney Plus series. And you notice it because the songs are not written to the same caliber, which, to be fair, they don't have Lin-Manuel Miranda working on them this time around, which, believe me, makes the difference. Because there's nothing in this on par with either How Far I'll Go or You're Welcome. The script is nowhere near as well written, and the new supporting characters suck. I mean, they are so uninteresting. You've got one of them who might be the most patronizing, borderline offensive autistic stereotype you've seen in an animated film, maybe ever. that, if not just in some time, and she's kind of the techie one who's working on the boat all the time, like, this just doesn't work. What are you thinking? You've got an old miserable guy who stops being entertaining pretty much by his second line of dialogue, and then you've got a third one who hero worships Maui, which, again, didn't she do that in the first movie? Why are you doing this? You've then got a number of plot beats which seem to exist to simply replicate the plot beats from the first one. Except for the second act, where, if you remember the second act of the first Moana, they had the whole sequence where they went down into the shiny crab cave, and you had Jermaine Clement as the hyper camp giant crab doing the shiny, bit, which, you've got a young son, I know you've seen Moana to death. You know what I mean? Like, you know shiny. Yeah. And if not, I'm sure Edie's done it. I'm sure Edie's done it to you as well. You know what I mean? The shiny sequence. There is an attempt to do that again, but this time around, it is so convoluted and literally so incoherent that because, put it this way, you know what film critics are like. Very rarely do two of us agree. Okay, very rarely.
Yeah.
And especially not to the extent we did on this one. We were stood around outside the Odeon after this film thinking, what was happening in the second act of that? Because it honestly feels like they were in a rush. They couldn't quite come up with an actual thing to do for it. We'll try and replicate the thing from the first movie, but we don't have the time to work out if it makes sense or not. And it genuinely plays as if they are in outer space. And I'm not exaggerating. There's no sense of gravity to it, or weight, or sense of location. It's like in a void. It's in like a black void with loads of bright fluorescent colours. Are they in outer space? Because it feels like it. You've then got a villain who's voiced by Nicole Scherzinger, who's like a vampire, I think. And she literally shows up for like 10 minutes and then sods off. And this is halfway into the movie. She shows up for 10 minutes, sods off, and then the movie doesn't have a villain. There's just like a storm at the end. Like the third act is them fighting an evil lightning storm, which we're told is meant to be a villain. And I think it sort of plays like the 2007 20th Century Fox version of Galactus from the Fantastic Four, if you can imagine that. And it doesn't make any sense. None. And you then wind up with this unbelievably kowtowing, pandering, patronising mid-credit sequence in which I don't want to spoil it for you, but to be honest, the film makes so little sense that I couldn't really spoil it for you if I tried, except to say that they really do set up for you what the villain of an imagined Moana 3 would be. What the threat of a Moana 3 would be. And you come away from it thinking, Christ, I hope they never make that movie. Like, please just don't make. I don't want to have to sit through this again, because mostly I was bored. And I was bored in that way in which, put it this way, Albert and Edie would enjoy this. You would not. You and Bex would not enjoy this. You would be bored to death watching this, thinking, you would look at your watch like I did a lot of time, thinking, how much longer is this? Like, what is going on in the second act of this? Like, how much money did you throw at Dwayne Johnson to get him to do this reduced amount of screen time? Because that's another thing. It's very obvious that they were going to just pay Dwayne Johnson for the first and last episodes of this TV show, and that would be enough to carry it through. Like, they weren't paying him to be on his show every week because of how much Dwayne Johnson presumably costs. However, I will give it has got the scope, spectacle, and the great visuals of the first movie, except for the fact that the second act renders them into making literally no sense. So, if you can pawn your kids off onto one of the other parents and just have that parent take the kids as a group, do. And just go shopping. just go shopping or wait in the bar. You know what I mean? It's one of those. If you can avoid, as the parent, sitting through Moana 2, I cannot advise you wholeheartedly enough to do so. It plays a lot like the kind of crap direct-to-video sequels that you and I will remember from the 1990s, but that kids these days are kind of spared. Because don't forget, in this day and age, we don't get things like Lion King 2 Simba's Pride, or The Return of Jafar, or Beauty and the Beast and Enchanted. You remember all of those crap sequels they used to make to Disney films?
Yeah.
This is the modern incarnation, only now they're getting put into cinemas and we're being charged admission for it. And believe me, you'll mostly come out of it bored and angry.
Well, if you do want to pay another parent to take your children to go and see Moana 2, you can, because it is in cinemas from today.
Can I just recommend as well that if you are doing that, just take some pity on said babysitting parent and just spring for the premium recliner seat for them, because they're going to need it. And they've earned it.
And a bottle of vodka. Right, so we are going to be back in a moment. We're going to look at our final movie of the week, which is Conclave, and we'll see what Van thought of that. Stay where you are. We'll be back. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. We are here with our final movie of the week, and we are going to look at Conclave. Now, Van, I don't know a lot about this one. It's a thriller, am I right?
Dramatic thriller, yeah. Very, in fact, almost a mystery thriller, actually. So, first of all, let's just take a moment to genuinely appreciate that this is an actual film that's being released in cinemas, aimed at adults. And it's not based on an IP, it's an adaptation of a best-selling novel with an actual acclaimed cast in an actual adult mystery thriller. Oh my God. I never thought I would celebrate this actually being a thing. So, based on the novel of the same name, and apparently following it quite closely, because a friend of mine got in touch with me to ask if it was any good, and like, did they keep this and did they keep that? And I'm like, yeah, actually, they kept all of that. So, it centers around what happens, and this is set in the present day, what happens when the Pope dies of a heart attack, and the cardinals, the Council of Cardinals, enter Conclave, which I think I gave you the Cliff Notes version earlier, is when they are locked and sequestered away and they vote on who the new Pope is to be. Now, we follow this from the perspective of the Dean of Cardinals, who's played by Ralph Fiennes. He is Cardinal Lawrence. And he is serving really as an administrator. He's the guy that's working out the logistics, and because, bear in mind, set in the present day, this involves things like we have to soundproof the windows so that nobody can use listening devices on the windows. We have to set up electronic jammers so that nobody can surveil this or get messages in and out. We have to physically lock the building down. The logistics. However, instead of simply being able to kick back and rest on his laurels simply handling the logistics, he starts to find something a bit more devious at work when it transpires that nearly every candidate who is being put forward for the papacy comes with their own bag of misdeeds and corruption. He finds himself digging into each of the potential candidates one by one and discovering just what they've got going on under the hood. So I've got a clip for you. This is Ralph Fiennes and Stanley Tucci. Tucci being one of the potential candidates for the papacy, potentially the new pope. And Tucci telling him, you got to get with this program because some of us are liberal, some of us really want to take us back to the Dark Ages.
I thought we had your support. If we liberals are not united, Tedesco will become Pope. You have no idea how bad it became, Thomas. The way he and his circle attacked the Holy Father towards the end. The smears, the leaks to the press, it was savage. He fought him every single day of his pontificate. And now that he's dead, he wants to destroy his life's work. If Tedesco becomes Pope, he will undo 60 years of progress.
You talk as if you're the only alternative, but Adeyemi has the wind behind him.
Adeyemi? Mm-hmm. Adeyemi, the man who believes that homosexuals should be sent to prison in this world and hell in the next. Adeyemi's not the answer to anything, and you know it.
I tell you the one thing that I'm really interested in this movie, and you're probably going to laugh. I really want to know how they do the whole smoke thing at the end. Like, does they show that?
Yeah. Obviously, they have to do it every day. They every day you get a status update via the smoke, and it's actually like a smoke grenade. They literally have like a little fireplace that they open, and they literally pull the pin off a smoke grenade and put it inside and shut the door. And they have different coloured grenades for different stuff. They're not actually grenades, obviously, but they have different coloured ones.
What if they get the wrong colour though? I mean, that could cause all sorts of trouble.
Have you never seen the movie Euro Trip? Because it comes up as a plot point in Euro Trip.
No.
in which, oh man, I got to get you a copy of the movie Euro Trip. You're missing out on one of the unsung bangers of the early 2000s, my friend. Anyway, this is terrific. This is wow. Like, I never thought in a million years this would make for one of the best thrillers I'd seen in ages. Like, you really wouldn't think Cardinals' vote for who the new Pope is would make for as riveting a thriller as this. So you've got Ray Fiennes, you've got Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, Isabella Rossellini, and so it's all based on the Robert Harris's novel, the same name. And if you have read the novel, yes, they have kept the ending, the ending sort of pivot / twist, which, again, wow. I thought this was fascinating. Also, the way that this is blocked, framed, lit, and photographed is just stunning. This will be, it goes without saying, this will be nominated for Best Picture. I also think there's a chance it could win. Presently, I think it's between this and Anora for what's actually going to win Best Picture come the start of March. But I think it's going to be between potentially this and Dune Part 2 for what's got the best cinematography, according to the Academy. This is going to appeal very much to the same kind of crowd that enjoyed Spotlight. Do you remember Spotlight from 2016, the journalism movie about the Catholic priest in Boston?
Vaguely, yes.
This is very much going to appeal to that sort of crowd because it is hushed, tense conversations in rooms. And, involving the church and how do we function in the modern world and what are we guilty of, things like that. And as the scale of corruption starts to leap further and further higher, you honestly aren't prepared for what comes out. I think this is brilliant. I had heard it was good, but I had heard it's good from effectively the Cardigans, among the film critics. So I wasn't exactly holding out a lot of hope. And then I watched it literally today. I was like,
I thought you meant the band then.
No. Believe me, I would put more faith in the film opinions of any members of the band The Cardigans than I would Peter Bradshaw at The Guardian. So, you know what I mean? Sorry, Peter. Just saying, buddy. Crack a smile sometime. Anyway.
Being filmed in such a beautiful place, is the cinematography up to scratch on this then? I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, the cinematography, like I say, is next to none. It's gorgeous. And they have recreated parts of... They're actually gone, and they spent time at the Vatican.
Wow.
Like researching, they're spending time in the locations, and they have recreated the Sistine Chapel, for instance. And because apparently they have taken a little bit of liberty with the Sistine Chapel to basically make it a little bit more claustrophobic. Now, I actually didn't notice, but apparently they have added elements that create claustrophobia to it. But some of the shots in this... I mean, there was one point I thought two of the characters were having a conversation in front of just the most glorious-looking painting you'd ever seen. And it's actually a corridor. As the camera gets closer and closer, you realise this thing behind them is a literal physical corridor. I'm like, that's real. That's a real corridor. Wow! I thought that was just the sexiest painting I've ever seen. Like an almost Dante-esque painting, But yeah, just gorgeous. The performances, what a role for Ray Fiennes. Just what a role. But also, it offers John Lithgow a chance to sort of lean into type here, because John Lithgow's brand is, you never quite, he can play a good guy and he can play the worst villain, the nastiest villain you've ever seen. You never quite know with this character which way that's going, because his character is quite clearly up to something. You're just not quite sure. And as for Stanley Tucci, who, starts off, his character kind of goes through quite the journey. But the very first line of dialogue that the Tooch delivers, and I'm a big fan of Stanley Tucci.
Yeah.
But the very first line of dialogue the Tooch gets, and I do mean literally first line of dialogue, you're just like, wow, you really can just charm the pants off of anyone in a single line of dialogue, can't you, buddy? Huh. I mean, also, let's take a moment to appreciate that Pastor King himself, Stanley Tucci, finally got to go to the Vatican. I bet he's been waiting his whole life for that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, directed by Edward Berger, incidentally, who gave us the Netflix All Quiet on the Western Front 2 years ago. Not skipped a beat. Honestly, just a terrific movie.
It looks great. I mean, I'm sat kind of as I normally do, watching the trailer in mute, and the cinematography is beautiful. I just saw the umbrella scene, which looks quite great, where you've got the camera looking down.
Yeah, that's one of the final shots as well, and it's gorgeous. The whole film is stunning.
Well, if you want to watch Conclave, you can, because it's out in cinemas from today. I'm guessing that's going to be your movie of the week, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Conclave is far and away film of the week, but I'll be really honest, it's one of the best films I've seen this year. But it's, believe me, that is, you know how there's that difference between a film and a movie? That is a film. Very much. You know what I mean? That is film with a classical F. That is the Scorsese meme, the Scorsese meme, like pure cinema, absolute cinema, I believe is the Scorsese meme. Very much that.
If it was written on paper, it would almost be in calligraphy.
Exactly that. Yeah, the finest of calligraphy.
I hear you. Right, well, it's in cinemas from today. Let's have a quick nosy at next week then. What have we got coming up?
So next week we've got a wrestling movie starring Don Cheadle and Jennifer Lopez called Unstoppable. We've got the new Cate Blanchett movie Rumors. The documentary Merchant Ivory is next week. So I've been looking forward to that actually, because I know of Merchant Ivory because when I was growing up in the Middle East and we only got films on cable that were like 10 years old, I saw a lot of Merchant Ivory movies. I hated them with a fiery passion, but I was always kind of intrigued by like Room with a View.
Yes.
You know, those kind of movies. They always starred like Anthony Hopkins and young Helena Bonham Carter, and everyone wore a corset, and guy can't get the girl for 30 years because them were the times, to quote Entourage. Those kind of movies. This is the documentary about the creative duo. James Merchant and I forget who the other one, what his first name was, Ivory. We've also got Nocturnes, which I profess I know very little about, except for the new Dogwolf movie, and a film I saw last night starring Amy Adams called Night Bitch, which is an adaptation. This is an adaptation of a best-selling novel, which, having seen the movie, I can sort of understand how it was a best-selling novel, because the novel must be terrific.
Yeah,
because the film's pretty good, and. Yeah, I mean, I won't spoil it for you. Suffice to say that I will be saying nice things about Night Bitch next.
It does look to me, I'm watching the trailer as we speak, it does look to me like there's going to be some jump scares in that one as well. So I look forward.
If I just tell you, it's actually not a scary movie, but I will tell you that it's about the mother of a toddler, a sort of stay-at-home mum played by Amy Adams, who starts to think that she's turning into a dog. That's the plot of it.
My goodness, that's like my child that does that. He pretends that he's a dog. So that's going to set me off, isn't it? All right, well, we shall see what all of those are like next week. Well, Van gets to watch most of them this week. But that's it, I'm afraid. All we have time for on the show right now. We will return next week. Until then, I've been Adam Ball.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall be back.